How much money you got? That's what it is. You guys get these interviews for free. I need to get paid. Let's go.
My man, congrats on the win.
Thank you. Up next is... Good. I'm out.
I'll say the Reddit post I saw first. It was a big picture of Islam and Volkanovski both holding their belts before their first big hyped fight. Real take. It's the fighters that have to promote themselves leveraging the brand of the UFC. The casuals love a bad blood, outspoken fighters or trash talk. The UFC can't fake an altercation. Fighters have to promote themselves by being interesting to the masses. And underneath it says, the original poster wasted real time to post this. That is the Reddit opinion. That is a completely bollocks, nonsensical statement. And was like, what a waste of time. This guy's trolling. Everyone dismissed the shit out of it. Like, the UFC is the promotion. Dana White is a promoter. They're the ones that do the promoting. And also with the whole Charles Radtke thing going on. The question is, whose responsibility is it, do you think? And people at home, because some of you might disagree immediately. Do you think it's more on the promotion and the UFC to find a way and spend their money to promote these fighters to people? Or do you think ultimately it has to be on the fighter to be either unique or outlandish or do something to promote themselves?
You have to give the UFC sound bites. Like, what is happening here? You have a stage that the UFC pays for. They rent it out. They point their cameras at it. They put it on their YouTube channel. Every media company in the free world that wants to be there is there. People pay to be on those platforms. People pay just to get a logo on the mat and never say a single word. They're just happy to be a part of the visual part of things. When you have valuable time there to speak, you're not just speaking for you. You're not just speaking for the media so they can get clicks. You're doing it for you. It's like there is a huge part. I mean, it's like anybody who's been a really, really popular star, they're the ones that go through the paces with the media tours where they hop in a chair and they speak to like 12 different news stations all back to back. You have to be willing to do that on your end. Yes, the UFC is, at least equally as responsible, but I think this is my personal opinion. What the UFC is trying to do is amplify whatever it is of your character traits.
Like Sean Strickland, I know he has the gift of the gab and whether he says the right things or not, but his championship reign lasted one fight. And I think he's made himself enough of a star where it doesn't matter. I think there was a feeling of Sean was never meant to be a champion. It felt like someone that was in a role that was not suited for it. But because of his personality and the way he exaggerates himself on camera, he has now made a name for himself, and people know exactly what they're going to get with Sean. Whereas if you make your appearance, I'm a professional guy, I'll answer the questions you give me, and then I'll fight, you're not going to be remembered in the same way, even if you achieve greatness.
You wonder whether or not as well, though, it is the very fact that the UFC is so successful now, and they are owned by Endeavor, who's obviously this ginormous powerhouse
Billions
now,
of money.
coupled with WWE. And back in the day where MMA was at the right place at the right time during like the reality TV sort of phase, like MTV was on top of the world and it was this like the voice of a new generation. And the UFC was riding that wave really, really well. And they were all hustling to not just stay alive, but like to succeed as well, to ride that wave, to make it, the biggest it can be. You wonder whether or not UFC are now at that point where it's just like, oh, well, we made it. We're worth billions and billions of dollars. We are now the UFC. Whereas back in the day, you would have Dana White and Joe Rogan turning up to a red carpet event, for MTV, or you'd have the Ultimate Knockouts, which was a separate TV show on Spike that just ran knockouts because they knew they needed to get that imagery out into the world. The growth during the Spike era of the UFC, everyone was working hand in hand. So it was this struggle to survive and succeed was the thing that really pushed them forward. And you do wonder whether or not when fighters get to the UFC now, they go, right, I've done it. I've made it. All the hard work, trying to push myself, getting my social media going, finding sponsors it's all come to this point where now I can sit back. I'm in the Premier League. I don't need to work as hard as this other stuff because I'm going in to fight in a cage.
I think the novelty's gone. I think that's a part of it. Because when it was first coming on the scene, it was like, oh, There's like this whole thing where they don't have to stop once they knock him down. The fight can continue, and they combined all the martial arts. There's a very, very big novelty to that. And then you had those initial boom of stars, and they retired, and a lot of people left. I think that's a huge part of it as well, because a lot of them were boring by today's standards. I think it's gotten more outlandish now. Back then, you had, yeah, sure, but they were
like
very
Tito
worried
and-
about
and-
getting shut down.
And Ken Shamrock was, they lent into Ken Shamrock
Yeah.
because he was like really well-known guy. That guy had like 3 fucking fights with Tito. Why? Because they wanted him to main event because he was a big WWF superstar. That's why.
They were less like, they were definitely characters, but they were less overt. So it's like the Huntington Beach bad boy, sure, there was a lot of creation in that. But Tito was very much that bad boy. He was very much that dude that was crazy cocky as hell. He was actually that person. Whereas was Chael really Chael Sonnen 7 years after that in 2012? Well, I guess it was more like 2010.
Yeah, but you wonder whether or not it's because the sport has developed so wonderfully now where everyone can see that they can be a martial artist. Whereas back in the day, fighting in a cage really was only something that a certain person was interested in.
But it's not like all those fighters were able to be successful. Like Chuck Liddell is someone from that period of time, and he's a guy who's gone on the record saying, hey, all fighters, it is up to you to put on a performance to get people to watch you. Like, it's nothing to do with the UFC. It's on you. If you don't perform, you're not going to get to that level. And I know we always get this narrative that like the UFC push people, and they do. They give them, favorable matchups. But, when you're talking about he's been selected, I don't think the UFC necessarily selected him. I think he showed up and everyone in the world went, that guy's pretty interesting. Yeah. And the UFC were like, okay, let's promote that guy. I don't necessarily think
him in a way.
Yeah, but I don't think
he earned
we
it.
picked him because he was interesting. I think that's
Yeah,
happened a lot.
I think the fans make the
Yeah.
choice and the UFC responds to that. And I think that's true of any medium anywhere in the world. If you don't care, what advertising is going to make you care? Probably nothing. Because you're like, no, it's not the highest level. That's what a lot of people will say. And there's a lot of mistruth to that, mischaracterized type kind of things. Because, in 2015, everybody that was champions in the UFC were all from Strikeforce and WEC at the exact same time. So it's not necessarily true, but that marketing to an extent, that shows you where the UFC's marketing is good.
And also as well, like it kind of, the idea of it's not the highest level of mixed martial arts. It's just like the reality of it is, I think there is like definitely a large portion of people who watch fighting for the high level of fights. However, I think there's a fucking ginormous pool of people that watch fighting because they want to see the personalities. I mean, there is a reason why influencer boxing became as big as it became, and you now have Jake Paul who's transitioning into actual boxing. It's because people just want to see celebrities fight as well. And it's the same kind of element with like Kimbo Slice going through Elite XC and Strikeforce as well. That fucking guy made millions of dollars despite the companies, going under, Elite XC being managed poorly and Strikeforce being acquired. When Kimbo Slice fought prior to the loss against Seth Petrozelli, he was making so much fucking money because he looked the way he looked. And all he actually did was fight in a fucking back garden.
Yeah.
You see the gold teeth, you see the big fucking chain, you see the absolute mammoth of a man, and he knocked down what Tank Abbott and a bunch of guys who had no records. People flooded in to see him fight.
I think that's a perfect example of what we're talking about, though. This guy already had traits that were just magnified by everywhere it went. What does a promotion do? They will promote what it is that is interesting about you. And if you have a ton of interesting stuff, I mean, dude was a viral sensation. All they had to do is say, practically, we've got this guy.
And for that whole period of him in the Elite XC, what did you have? You had Dana White going, no, he sucks. And then what happened as soon as like Kimbo was a free agent? Oh, look, he's on our reality show on The Ultimate Fighter.
The perfect example really is something like Power Slap, because it's like, obviously some of us don't want to watch Power Slap for just the reason that it's Power Slap, but how much money have they put into promoting Power Slap?
Yeah.
And do any of us know any of the fighters from that? I mean, that's a perfect example of throwing money at something, and it doesn't matter how much you promote it.
Yeah.
No one's going to watch it. There are people who are going to disagree with this as an argument. We're obviously trying to break it down logically, but the UFC can't just chuck money at someone and promote them and expect everyone to watch them. Like, it has to be on the individual.
It seems like at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual, and not everyone is a star, and that's a fact, and that's okay.
Legitimately true, yeah.
That's okay. Like you don't have to be, but maybe if you want the most success, you want the most value of your career while you're competing, which we know is a very short window. You have to be unique. You have to be different. You have to make us care about watching you. If you're just a martial artist and you're a decisionator and you're winning the best way you can with least injury, getting the best performance for your career, that's going to take you a hell of a lot of fucking time before anyone cares.
Something that people like. Are you doing something that people like? Obviously. If you're knocking the fuck out of people like that. People get behind that.
That's the thing. If you're knocking the fuck out of people, not saying a word,
you're all right.
People will be like,
that's like a Fedor. Mark Hunt or Fedor thing.
Fedor,
but like this guy, his favorite fighter, Mike Perry, found his lane now.
My favorite fighter.
Mike Perry has found his lane now, but before he was kind of a middling kind of talent in the UFC, but people loved him because he was a fucking weirdo. But like when he would show up, he would say and act weird and say weird things and scream in his opponent's face.
Yeah.
And it's like that gets put online because it's like, this is not normal.
Yeah.
Look at this guy. And it's like, so Mike Perry probably just being himself. So if you don't have it in you, it's going to be very difficult to bring that out.
What happened to nicknames in the sport? Back in the day, people were like, who's the Iceman guy? It's like, what's happened to sort of the characterization of the athletes?
Very WWE.
There's lots of posters. We have a poster on the wall out there where it's literally a cartoon, and they've compared it to like a cartoon, like fucking Superman.
Yeah.
We were talking about that because the two guys in that cartoon are two of the least like marketable fighters.
Yeah, exactly.
And not Lawler, but they don't talk.
It's that element of the characterization of athletes, I think, has slipped off, and we're moving more towards these are professional athletes, and they shouldn't be presented as characters or Mortal Kombat guys.
I don't know though, man. I think they're more caricaturesque.
I think Jay's right.
I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but they're more characters than they've ever been now. It's like, just look at Sean O'Malley. Look at Colby Covington and what he dressed up like.
But is that monopolized? Monetized enough though by the UFC to, like, to be fair, TNT Sports, they actually do a fucking good job of marketing their guys. Like the Habib cartoon that they did, running up the mountain. Holy shit! How many people watched that and cried their eyes out?
But the thing about this is, right, like
Leon Edwards in the streets of Birmingham, growing up, and
the Leon Edwards one, sure, all right. So you've given two examples there. The Habib one was great and people loved it. Number one, Habib was already popular because of what he'd done, because of what he said in the cage. When you did the Leon Edwards one, it was great. How many people saw it? Not a few people.
That is true. Yeah. We remember that because we work in video, and so we admired it.
Yeah, we did. At the end of the day, a lot of people will say what you say, like, oh, they could do more trailers, they could do more deep dive stuff.
But they could, though.
They could spend millions doing that, or you could be Sean Strickland and stand up at a press conference and instantly save millions by
raise
doing
the pay-per-view
that,
by 25%.
Yeah. After Sean Strickland stood up and did all his stuff, why didn't they go fucking visit him at a shooting fucking ranch, or do like a cool kind
This
of
is true
trailer
as well.
of him? There's loads of shit out there at the moment, which is like Sean Strickland and Nina fan edits of them in Grand Theft Auto. If her relationship with the UFC is so good, why aren't they going, oh, this is the perfect opportunity, let's go send them to do some sort of Grand Theft Auto crossover thing? The thing is, if they are $1 billion company, why aren't they doing a little bit more fan service? They don't have to do it, but they could.
They definitely could.
And it could be fucking awesome, because then you could go, hey bro, I know you don't know Conor McGregor and I know you don't know Eddie Alvarez, but watch this fucking trailer of them walking to MSG and tell me you're not excited about that.
But do you remember, obviously they used to do all the head-to-head stuff, right? Like with John Jones, Cormier, all that stuff back in the day.
Face-to-face.
They did that little while ago for the most two random fucking people ever. They did Dominic Cruz and Chito Vera. Like, why?
Yeah.
But everyone fucking loved it.
Yeah.
And it was the most lazy piece of shit recording in a white room where they just had a really nice, pleasant conversation. But everyone fucking loved it still, because it's like behind the scenes. It's like, oh my God, they've agreed to talk before they're fighting. How interesting. Or a trailer where Tyson Fury's dressed up as a cowboy and Usyk comes in as a pirate. Like, why are we not having that? But I just feel like even if you don't like these cinematic trailers, you could be in a barber's and be like, oh, did you see that fucking Usyk Fury? What was that about? That was crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it was Saudi Arabia going nuts with the production levels. But you're talking about it and everyone knows, and then the person next to you will overhear it, and then they'll go home and look it up. The Ngannou one was a bit more subdued than that, but it was still cool. But this one is like insane. It's like a Marvel movie.
But when it comes to like the fans, like, are people like, oh, I've got to see the Usyk fight?
I think if you're
even
not,
though they're not the number one
I
guys
think if you're
anymore.
if you're not a fight fan, but
Possibly, yeah.
if you're not a fight fan and you want to get a non-fight fan interested in why this fight is important, why it makes sense, why you would want to watch that with them, sending someone footage of a fight doesn't necessarily work because I have no fucking idea what I'm looking at. But when you can send a trailer that it's almost like an encapsulating of who these people's lives are, and then you show the big knockouts at the end of it, and they're putting everything on the line. It's so much easier to get those non-fight fans interested in what you want to watch because it instills a level of entertainment in it to go, oh, I like films, I like TV. This is like a film TV, but it just so happens to be. That's why people like, like real true crime films. Why am I interested in watching this film just because it's based on a true story? Why does it matter?
When you don't know who these people are, and I've seen some highlights on YouTube. I've seen Ferguson versus Pettis. I'm like, okay, I'll actually watch one live to see what it's like. Until something happens, I don't quite know the technical nuances. I don't know the strategies. I don't know their personalities. I don't know what they normally do in the cage. And it's like, if you don't have that base level of understanding in a new sport, boxing, MMA, whatever, it's kind of hard to relate to these people and understand the stakes of things. So if you do a big trailer like this, like I know Tyson and Usyk aren't getting in the ring in pirate costume, and they're going to have a swashbuckling contest, Yeah. But I do know this is a big deal. There's a lot of money in this trailer. This is insane visuals that I'm looking at. It's got to be, it's reinforcing it. It's saying, this is coming up, guys. Don't forget.
Well, yeah,
even though
why
it's just
not have
fallen
fun?
out.
Why
But
not
yeah,
have fun?
It's
Yeah.
having fun, but telling your audience, this is a big deal. This is the two baddest outlaws that have never fought. They keep crossing paths, but now finally, well, they're not actually, but now finally they're going to clash.
They don't have to do it.
But they should.
But it would be fun if they
It just goes back full circle to what you were talking about in the early days, the Spike days, regardless of whether it was new or not. It was a symbiotic relationship. And that's what we aren't sometimes seeing, which is why there are a lot of people who would be like, oh, the UFC needs to promote fighters more. But it's more like they need to promote the right fighters, and they could spend more time doing those trailers. They definitely can't promote someone who we don't care about, which we've discussed. If you aren't putting on performances, if you aren't doing some kind of something to get people interesting, then they could throw money at you, nothing's going to happen. But there are fighters we care about, and it is right, we don't really get what we want. We want cool epic trailers and sit downs, and we don't get that.
But why are we hearing things like Cody Garbrandt versus Davison Figueiredo is the first fight of UFC 300 below people like Bo Nickel? Two former champions who were, some of the greatest in the division at one point. Figueiredo being the hardest hitting and possibly best champion since DJ.
No, this is a great point to bring up. Okay, so tell me what you remember them promoting about Bo Nickel. Tell me any promotion you remember the UFC doing for him. And how popular is he?
Fighting on a Contender Series twice I think was a great move.
The thing is, the point that I'm getting at there is you care about Bo Nickel because the people do. The people are what rose him up. He's the highest rated guy probably since O'Malley first debuted on the Contender Series. Like, I'm pretty sure the UFC has outright come out and said that. It's an insane amount of hype that you just can't fake.
And it's also the shit that he's saying when he goes on podcasts and he says, Chimaev, man, put me in there with him and it'll be over in a heartbeat.
He's promoting himself massively.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's nothing there, it's Demetrius Johnson saying, I don't want to fight TJ Dillashaw, but no offense, Shorty Torres sounds like a great fight, who nobody knew. Ray Borg sounds like a good fight.
Well,
nobody knew them.
That's the thing about Demetrius Johnson, right? How hard did they fucking work to get Demetrius Johnson over? How fucking hard they were pushing him to be like, this guy is the best ever. And then they just traded him for an old Ben Askren because they were like, we can't make this work.
Yeah, they made a reality TV show about him that
Yeah.
was a series of champions. They put that on free TV. They used to put him on the headliner for Fox cards. They would put him underneath John Jones as the co-main event. They did everything they could to make that guy more popular. And at the end of the day, the person who Demetrius Johnson is now would have been a dream for them back then, because now he does speak his mind. He's more popular than ever on his own streams because he's actually trying. And he's gone on interviews with the MMA Hour and Ariel Wani saying, I wish I would have talked like this when I was champion, because it was all just like, yeah, whatever.
Do you know what they could have done, though? They could have made him a cartoon mouse.
Why aren't you working for the UFC?
I know, exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't around for the whole Cody era, but I was obviously for Davison. And obviously, I'm very familiar with those guys. Whereas someone like Bo Nickel, I know he's good. I can see he's good from his performances. But it's the way that he gets put in above these guys, and he has like 5 fights, which is fine. If you are a talent, you deserve to be there. However, he's fighting Cody Brundage, and it's like...
But again, you know, this comes back to the idea of the promotion. They didn't do anything to make you care about Bo Nickel. They did nothing.
I don't care about Bo Nickel, is my point. Is I don't.
You do.
No, I don't.
You're talking about him.
No, I don't care. I'm talking about him because it bothers me that he's in this spot. I don't care about him in the way that I want to see Bo Nickel put in there with the top guy.
Yeah, but
now.
At the end,
but that's what I would care about. That's what I'd be excited. I think I'm at a level of fandom where I'm kind of like, I understand... What am I trying to say?
But you understand why.
Yeah, and also, let's not forget as well that he's the new kid on the block, and Cody Garbrandt and Davison Figueiredo are... Send them off to the fucking glue factory, mate. They've made the UFC their money already. They have. Do you really see a world where Cody Garbrandt comes back and becomes the fucking bantamweight champion?
No, but it's a hell of an exciting fight.
But Bo Nickel, he's a new shiny fucking toy in the shop. I want the Bo Nickel fucking toy. I don't want
stick him in there against the guy. Give him the challenge.
It doesn't really matter because everyone's going to buy UFC 300 anyway, and it doesn't really matter what order
It's
those
the
fights
perfect
are in.
spot for Bo Nickel to become a massive star as well, and that's what they're hoping for as well. I think in terms of like how are they marketing him? They're putting him in the fucking best spot that they could put him in to make him a bigger star.
Yeah, that happens all the time. That's why I said, like, if they promote in the wrong direction, people hate them.
He talks so confidently. And he's clearly very, very good. So it's like, just fucking wasting time and giving Cody Brundage.
Bullshit. He's got loads of time.
Give him
all the time in the world. Why rush him?
Give him someone ranked.
You've just seen your favourite fighter get slow balled to the perfect spot. And now you want to rush this guy.
Yeah, that is so true, dude.
Yeah, it may be true.
It literally is
the
true.
first time it's ever happened.
Can I explain myself? I also don't care. Throw Sean in there with someone who was his level.
Yeah.
But
maybe that's what they thought his level was at that point as well.
True.
Yeah.
Potentially.
They don't know. It's a difficult place to be in as a promoter, isn't it? To be like, man, we could throw him in early, and if he just gets fucking knocked out,
he's Darren Till.
Yeah, if you're Darren Till, it's like, oh man, we wasted so much time building this guy up, and he was going to be this great regional star. And then, you know, he could have survived the Woodley loss. Honestly, he could have. But after he got sparked by Masvidal, like, it's hard to... he's lost against a champion. Now he's been sparked by a fucking journeyman as well, like, in front of the home crowd in the main event. It's just like, it's hard to come back from that.
And the UFC's forthright about that. They've admitted that they pushed him too soon. That does happen. Guys, do you feel like you've been getting ripped off? You've been watching these podcasts and you don't feel like you're getting the full experience? Well, you can now for just $2.99, but also... we've just lowered the price drastically for our Hall of Fame levers.
You're so nearly there.
$7.99. That is down from $14.99, almost a 50% cut. You get all the same features. You get mentioned in all the videos at the beginning and the end, and you also get a special live stream with us. So if you want to see our writing process, suggest some ideas, you can do it all.